I can't run co-host, so let me take care of this.
So we are live streaming.
I got power.
You have
all
power.
powerful.
Oh, nice one.
Yay.
So everything you just have to do is handle me the link to YouTube, then reposting it.
Okay. I think I could do that.
I would
too.
appreciate it a lot.
Yep.
And by the way, if you hear noises in the background, it's just my two brats around me waiting for mom to be back home.
All right. We are now live.
Wow. All right.
Who knew?
So we'll
Nice
give it
one.
maybe another minute for folks
Yes.
to join. Hey, Sophia, nice seeing you as always.
Hi, how's it going?
We are well.
Good, good.
So do I have on here the right minutes or the right? What day are we today? Yes, we are Feb 9. Okay.
Yes, we are Feb 9th.
What year again?
Amazingly enough, 2023, February
know.
9th. I can't believe we're already a whole month into this thing.
It's nuts.
You mean we're past 2000? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, just 23 years. Although I'm
Wow.
still 28.
So as folks trickled in, hello everyone, and welcome to our monthly or bi-monthly call of the Supply Chain and Trade Finance Special Interest Group at Hyperledger. All are welcome, like it says on your screen. Just a quick peek at the antitrust slide. We might be competitors. We might be talking about stuff. So please keep it civil and polite and adhere to the agenda meeting. Welcome again. Just move a couple of things here. We're live streaming, we're recording, and we have an agenda. So first up, very big welcome for Daniela Barbosa, who's the all-powerful at Hyperledger, and she has an important update on what's going on. So Daniela, yours, and I will stop sharing so that you can share your stuff.
Great. Excellent. All right, let me go ahead and share. Good morning, everyone. And good morning for those of you also watching on live stream and recording. I know we're very busy people. A lot of people have different things going on through the day. So we appreciate spending the time here with us at the Supply Chain and Trade Finance Special Interest Group. And for those of you who will see this in recordings, I hope you enjoy the session as well. I have about 30 minutes of content, but it is a lot of content. I just want everybody to know that. And I'm going to, for the live stream, Eric or Andreas, can one of you just keep an eye on the chat in the live stream so I don't have to?
Yeah. I think Eric and myself can do that.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So I have about half an hour of content. It is a lot of content. I know many of you. So hello, Alicia and Sophia. And, some of this might be repetitive, but I want to make sure that everybody kind of gets the view of how the Hyperledger Foundation is out there in the market and the kind of projects that we have today. So thank you. Hopefully we'll have some time at the end as well to go through any questions. This deck is going to be available for you to review after the session, and more importantly, to also use these slides in your own discussions when you talk to people about the Hyperledger Foundation, about your participation within the Hyperledger Foundation, and about the things that we'll be talking today. So thank you in advance for listening. As a reminder, our Hyperledger community is really global. You have folks here on the supply chain, trade finance, SIG from around the world, and we continue to have global members and community members around the world. These are data points from 2022, close to 40,000 contributors over the last 7 years here at the Hyperledger Foundation, with over 1.27 million contributions as well. And I don't know why that's popping in. And we continue to grow. Just in 2022, we added 26 new members to the Hyperledger Foundation. Our members are the member companies that help support and help fund a lot of the work and community support that we do. So we're very thankful for them. As I mentioned, we have been here for 7 years. We celebrated our 7th year anniversary in December. And it really is amazing what the community continues to produce and what the community continues to deliver. And I'll talk a bit about the tools, so the projects that we have here in the Hyperledger Foundation. But once again, we're truly global. We have working groups and special interest groups like this one that are run by our community members and our volunteers. So thank you all once again for all the work that you do for the special interest group and for the community as a whole. Our meetup communities continue to grow virtually and in person. I'm so excited to be out there also meeting people in person again. I'll be in Barcelona at the Mobile Web Congress. We'll be having a Barcelona meetup on March 2nd. And it's great to see everybody face to face, although I always love seeing everybody on Zoom as well. So a couple of things, obviously today we're talking to the supply chain trade finance special interest group, but we do have a very diverse ecosystem of enterprise technology and use cases across many industries. And supply chain is a very unique one that obviously touches a lot of different industries as well. And we're here really to foster a lot of the developers and the business and technical leaders that are working in these industries with blockchain technology and related technologies as well. We are now 16 different projects, and you can see here, and I'll talk a little bit about how this project portfolio, essentially, how we've gotten to it and where our focus is as we continue to move forward. We have graduated projects, so these are 6 graduated projects and 10 incubated projects. And our project lifecycle is, published on our wiki and on our website, but it's really important to understand why these projects kind of have a life cycle, and the maintainers and the project maintainers really work with the technical oversight committee and with staff in order to make sure that all these projects, as they move through the life cycle, are enterprise grade, that any company, any individual can pick up these code bases and have an understanding on where the project came from, how it's progressing through the project life cycle, and how they can be used in enterprise applications. So we'll talk a bit about that later on. So as a reminder, a brief history of Hyperledger. It's never brief because we've been here for 7 years, but what we've done in the last 7 years has really been amazing in regards to the technologies that we brought in, the community members that we've developed, the use cases that we put into production, and even the use cases that have failed, the projects that have closed down. It is so important to think about both the good things and the positive things in both ways. How have we learned and earned a lot of learning lessons from a lot of these use cases as well? And I'm here and happy to talk about that. But once again, formed in 2015, 2016 was the first year that projects came in. Hyperledger Fabric, Hyperledger Sawtooth, Explorer, and Aurora came in. And you can see that since then, obviously, we've had a lot, and I'll take you through it. Hyperledger Fabric, first project that came into the Hyperledger Foundation, continues to be one of the most adopted distributed ledger, permission distributed ledgers in the enterprise. In October of 2022, Block Data put out this report where Hyperledger Fabric was the preferred solution for 38% of the top 100 companies. So all the top ones here indicated that their blockchain use cases were using Hyperledger Fabric. We also obviously have Ethereum, and we know that Hyperledger Besu is mentioned here under kind of enterprise Ethereum, they call it. But we're very proud, obviously, of the Fabric community and of the use cases cases that we have in the marketplace. And you can read the whole report. Many of these slides, you'll see links at the bottom. And once you take a look at the slide deck, you can follow that for more information. 2022 continued to be a great year for Fabric, for the community, for the users of using Fabric in the enterprise. And some of the highlights here, we had 11 releases, or they had, the Fabric community had 11 releases in 2022. We started the discussion of the Fabric 3.0 releases already, and all that information, if you want to follow along with that conversation, you can visit the Hyperledger Fabric roadmap link there, and it'll take you to the wiki page where then you can link out to where these discussions are taking part. And I do encourage you to look at the upcoming release that's coming. If you have any feedback for the Fabric maintainers, please join the maintainers and the contributor calls. They'd love to get feedback from you. We've also been working with the Fabric maintainers to create different workshops. In 2022, there was multiple central bank digital currency workshops, and we're actually working on getting one together to do a virtual workshop as well. So the Fabric community continues to grow. But let's jump from 2016 and the great successes that we saw with Fabric, and we continue seeing with tools like Sawtooth and Iroha, which just announced another CBDC production use case in Laos. But 2017, we saw the first EVM, so Hyperledger Burrow, which was the first Ethereum virtual machine. We saw Hyperledger Quilt, which was our first project dealing with interoperability, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And obviously Hyperledger Indy, from an identity perspective, and the indie community continues to grow strong. We're seeing in 2022, we saw many use cases around with Hyperledger Indy and the projects that have come from the Hyperledger Indy community, including Aries, Ursa, and the newest one, AnonCreds, which I'll talk about. But we see projects in Canada, for example, the Energy Mines and Digital Trust, as well as public services in Rhode Island and in California, using these technologies to do digital credentialing across state use cases. And obviously in Europe, continued adoption and uses around digital identity and digital credentialing. ID Union is one of those projects. And if you follow the blog that I linked there, you can see a lot of these use cases on our blog as well. Last year, at the end of last year, we also launched a free edX course around self-sovereign identity. So this is a self-paced edX course. It's free to take. You can get a certification at the end. But if you really want to think about decentralized identity, which is interchangeable with SSI or self-sovereign identity and decentralized identity, there's a lot of great resources that the Hyperledger Foundation and this one in collaboration with the Linux Foundation has put out. And I highly recommend it if you really want to understand why decentralized identity is important for all use cases, including very much supply chain. If you think about manufacturing and things to things and IoT, decentralized identity becomes core to that. So free course, do take advantage of it. As we moved into 2018, and I actually joined the Hyperledger Foundation in the summer of 2017, right before Quilt came in, actually. But as we look at 2018, we saw Ursa, which was pulled out of Indy, and it's a cryptographic library, and Caliper for benchmarking of Hyperledger Fabric. There's a lot of great work going on right now around benchmarking. We have a blog post that we'll be putting out very shortly around Hyperledger Fabric performance. That Caliper obviously was used to do some of that research. So a lot of great things happening in that community. 2019, if we fast forward to 2019, we started seeing projects to Hyperledger Aries, once again pulled out of Indy, very important use cases there, and Avalon and Hyperledger Grid, which is our domain-specific supply chain project as well. And in 2019, as we looked about where the technology was happening, we also launched the Hyperledger Labs we had a little bit of the Hyperledger Labs before, but really put a push and kind of a structure around the Hyperledger Labs. 2019, early 2019, when we actually started, and even before 2019, started thinking about the spectrum of blockchains in the enterprise perspective. And we've always been of the opinion and of, from an education perspective, that is not a one size fits all for all enterprise use cases. There is a spectrum between permissionless and public blockchains and permissioned and private blockchains. And it's never it has to be this, or it's not black and white. It can't just be one or the other. That enterprises and the use cases that we see can actually have choices, and you can decide this use case and this network and this consortium, for example, needs to be on a permissioned blockchain, and this is why, and this is the benefits of it, versus this needs to be in a permissionless public blockchain. Obviously, in crypto on the completely left side of it as well. So we've always been of that opinion of it, and in 2019. We already had the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance had joined us in the previous year. The Enterprise Foundation, the EF, had joined the Hyperledger Foundation as associate members to help support the Ethereum ecosystem within the Hyperledger Foundation. And 2019, obviously, is when we brought in Hyperledger Besu as a project into the community. And last year, the Ethereum Foundation actually awarded Besu the Client Incentive Program. And this is really important because of the work that Hyperledger Besu as an execution client is doing for the Ethereum mainnet. So going back to my previous slide around the optionality that enterprises and use cases and governments need to understand that there are options out there from a public permissionless perspective to a private permission perspective. And we'll talk a little bit also about hybrids. But Hyperledger Besu continues to be adopted in many use cases in financial services, in different trade organizations, in central bank digital currencies, and we're very excited about that community. As I mentioned, 2019, Hyperledger Labs, and it's really a space for innovation and testing. And at the end of the session, I hope that we'll talk a little bit about what the supply chain and trade finance special interest group wants to do. We would love to see some code projects very focused on supply chain and trade finance in the Hyperledger Labs ecosystem. And today, we pull this out in November. Here are the top 10 most active labs that are available. And we're seeing really great innovation and communities coming together. And obviously, some of these labs become projects. So Hyperledger Cactus, for example, became a project, and Solang, which I'll talk about in a bit, all became projects. But as we think about how the world of enterprise blockchain continues to grow and evolve based on market needs, based on all those experimentations, the wins and the losses that we see, we all understand it's going to be a global network of network. It's never going to be one network to rule them all. And many enterprises need to be part of many of these different networks that they have to participate in. So, when we started talking about interoperability very early in the project in 2017 and 2018, there was different approaches. And today, there is a real need for interoperability for integrating basically distributed ledgers. This is important to address the real blockchain DLT fragmentation that we're seeing in the marketplace. And we truly believe, hence why we have 6 distributed ledger framework projects here at the Hyperledger Foundation, that companies need optionality. They need choices. It's not going to be one DLT to rule them all, but they also need tools to help with interoperability. What we also want to make sure is that we're saving developers from reinventing the wheel when they do need to work between networks, and really lowering that risk of adoption by distributed ledgers by businesses. So developers can choose the DLT framework that they want to work with, and then feel confident that those frameworks will work with other networks as needed. So in 2020, we introduced a project, as you all know, Hyperledger Cactus, and that came in as a contribution as part of the labs, and it was graduated into a project and a contribution. And today, last year, Cactus become cacti. And for those of you who might not be native English speakers, cactus is one. So one cactus. When you have multiple cactuses, they become cacti. So we rebranded the project Cacti because we had a major contribution to Cactus from IBM. It was a lab called Weaver with interoperability, and that the Cactus original code and the Weaver code is now being worked together. And there's a couple other contributions that we're seeing coming into Cacti as well. So the goal of Cacti is really an SDK of SDKs. It's not a blockchain of blockchains, really creating a pluggable architecture that is secure by default, that's toll free, right? Users should not be required to use tokens for transactions, and the operator shouldn't be required to take cuts from individual transactions. These are networks of networks that want to interoperate with each other. And once again, really important to make sure that adoption continues to grow is the low impact of deployment. And it doesn't really, the goal is not to interfere with the existing network requirements, but rather build on top of it in order to have that interoperability. So I'm fast forwarding really fast. You guys are getting like a fast tour of what happened, from 2015, and I hope this is helpful. In 2021, when I took over as executive director from Brian Bellendorf, who had been the executive director since 2016, and he went over to a very important Linux Foundation project here called the Open Source Security Foundation, where he's leading the work there to really make sure that open source code projects are secure and enterprises and governments can rely on it. And the Hyperledger Foundation works very closely with the Open Source Security Foundation to make sure that our own projects, if you remember that project Lifecycle that I talked about, that our own projects are adhering to the security requirements for, once again, that enterprise grade projects need to adhere to. So I took over in 2021, and we had already been talking about how this timeline, as you see, and how all our communities, not just the projects, but for example, the special interest groups that grew from 2016 to 2021 across many industries and across many global regions, why we were different. We were just not the Hyperledger project. We were now a foundation, an umbrella of different projects and different communities worldwide working for the Hyperledger Foundation mission and goal to really be the premier home for enterprise-grade blockchain and blockchain-related technologies. So we rebranded it to the Hyperledger Foundation, and I hope that all of you here, many of you have been here for since the last few years, have seen the change in how our community goes and talks about the work that they've done as well. So in 2021, after, throughout the 2021, once again, this is how we informed ourselves that we needed to be an umbrella, that we weren't just one thing, right? We weren't just Hyperledger Fabric or Hyperledger Sawtooth. We were different projects. In 2021, we welcomed two new projects, Bevel, and then Hyperledger Firefly. Bevel, another great story that came from the labs. It's an accelerator to help developers really set up their systems very quickly. And once again, this is because the market needs it, right? It's no longer just, skunk projects or POCs in the innovation labs. We need to enable organizations and developers to very quickly launch projects. So Hyperledger Bevel is one of it. We've had a lot of work, and there's a lot of great work right now happening around Fabric Operator. These are things that will enable enterprises to pick up the code bases, for example, Fabric, and be able to launch these projects much, much faster. Hyperledger Firefly was another one of these projects, came in September of 2021. Another one came through our labs, built up that community, went through the project lifecycle, and became a project. And it's really an important way to think about where enterprises are in the adoption of enterprise blockchain technologies, and especially, in the Web3 world as we talk about it. So Hyperledger Firefly is really a Web3 application. Think of it as a middleware layer. It's awesome because it really supports that optionality that I was talking about that enterprises want. They want to be able to choose what ledger itself they choose. Is it Fabric? Is it Besu? Is it Quorum? Is it R3 Corda? Is it something else? Is it basically, does it need to interact with the public blockchain? So they support, Firefly today supports all those and many more that you can go through. But what is important, if you think about why Firefly and why there's so much attention and a lot of developers and community interest in Firefly, is it really eliminates that custom coding and plumbing that you have to do over and over again if you're building out these systems. So without Firefly, you're basically building and updating a lot of the different parts of your system. And with Firefly, you're really just updating the business application layer that you need. So a lot of great work that's happening. And Firefly has a complete set of tools, has an explorer, has a developer, has DevOps. The Firefly community working even very closely with the other projects community has a lot of great content and recorded workshops. You can see the links on the bottom there. We also have an upcoming workshop around how to use Firefly to build out NFTs. Lots of great work that's coming out of this community. And if you haven't looked at Firefly, do highly recommend it. So once again, you see from my talk that these things are changing the way the enterprises are looking at it. It is no longer one thing fits all. I need to have just a permissioned private blockchain. These are emerging trends that we're seeing. In September, we spent a whole day with our members, our Hyperledger members in Dublin prior to the Hyperledger Global Forum, and we really talked about what is the growing trends that they are seeing essentially in the marketplace with their customers, with their partners. And one of those things that we identified was this concept of a hybrid blockchain, right? Which is basically where value is safely exchanged across permissioned or private, so between a permissioned and another permissioned or private network, or permissionless or public blockchain. So from a permissioned blockchain to a public blockchain. A Zonky, for those of you who don't know, it's my joke. This is the only joke, I promise, throughout the whole talk. A Zonky is a mixture between a donkey and a zebra. For those of you who don't know, that's why it's there on the slide. But we've been doing a lot of work with our members and our community and identifying these hybrid blockchains. So there's some at the end of the slide deck around the use cases. And over the last month and into the next 2 months, you'll see us talking about Hyperledger Hybrid, and you can follow those links as well. But why is it important? Right, enterprises, and Web3 startups alike really appreciate this gas-free chain, right? The predictability of not having to think about where the gas fee is going to be when you roll these things out and how much it's going to cost you. In general, you can have more general higher throughput if you do a combination of ledgering on a permissioned blockchain and then things like attestation on the public blockchain. And there's no need to hold crypto, right? And this is very important to enterprises across all segments, and enabling Web3 use cases. But not at this point holding crypto. But once again, it's that optionality, giving them the optionality that long-term, maybe they do want to hold crypto. Maybe they do want to build things that are very specific to crypto. And we love that. We love where companies and where a lot of these projects are going. I was at Davos in January, and one of the things that we did was we worked with 2 of our Hyperledger members, IPWE and Casper Labs, where they launched a patent, an IP patent NFT platform, and they issued 25 million patents on the Casper blockchain, which is purposely built public layer 1 blockchain for enterprises, and with Hyperledger Fabric as well. So take a look at that. There's videos out there of the demo that they did at the event, and you can read the blog as well. So back to my brief history of Hyperledger. I know it's getting very busy on this slide, but in 2022, we actually welcomed 2 more projects, many labs, but 2 more projects into our Hyperledger project umbrella. And those were Solang and AnonCreds. So very quickly, Hyperledger Solang, another great story coming out of the labs, really about what the community developers wanted and needed. And it's a portable Solidity compiler. So once again, the importance of the Ethereum ecosystem and how the Hyperledger Foundation supports it. And I do suggest that you take a look at it if you're interested. And it is about facilitating, these tools are facilitating access to the type of enterprise use cases that customers and your partners are building out. The second project was Hyperledger AnonCreds, which stands for Anonymous Credentials. This was pulled out. So this was a specific code base that was pulled out of Hyperledger Aries and Indy in the past, and really getting a lot of interest. Obviously, when you're thinking about digital wallets, the Linux Foundation is also about to launch a new project called the Open Wallet Foundation, and AnonCreds, as well as the W3 and ISO MDL credentials will be part of the Open Wallet Foundation as those building blocks are built. But you can read the announcement post, and there's been some great meetups as well on that project. So as you can see, we have so many projects, so many things, and many of you know our staff. We're a very small staff, but we've spent a lot of time over the last year also making sure that we have very clear and defined project services. These are really what the Hyperledger Foundation offers the developer community, and we have many services and tools that an open source project like the Hyperledger Foundation and the 16 projects and the 50 labs really need to be successful. So we build these based on the needs that projects for growth and adoption, depending on the stage that they are at. So you might have project services of tools and support for the active projects, those that have graduated, are in our graduated projects versus the incubated ones and versus the labs. And we really want to make it clear to everybody who's listening today that when developers start a new project and they bring it over to the Hyperledger Foundation as a lab, or even if they come in and want to propose it as a top-line project, we want them to be successful. So we just published this blog post around how we go about doing that as staff. How do we support, thanks to the Hyperledger members that support the Hyperledger Foundation, what are the services that we can offer? Any open source project, depending on the level that they come in, if they're a lab, if they're incubating, or if they are a graduated project. So please take a look at that. We'd love your feedback as you think about bringing code into the foundation, as you think about contributing as code contributors to these projects. What are the types of tools and services that you would like to see as well? But part of this is also pruning inactive projects. My timeline of, from 2016 to today has a lot of logos there and a lot of different projects. And there's things that work and things that don't, just like production networks, there's going to be things that succeed and things that don't. I like to use the statistic that, 9 out of 10 startups fail, and projects are no different. And it's not that they don't fail, they might be successful, but they just reach their end of life. So we've spent some time defining what an inactive project is, working with the technical oversight committee, really making sure, once again, that project lifecycle is very helpful to the developers and the maintainers and the communities to do that. So last year, we made inactive these projects, Avalon, Explorer, Burrow, and Quilt. And here's the beautiful thing. One of the projects, Hyperledger Explorer, it didn't have any maintainers. It wasn't being maintained. But guess what? It was being used by a lot of folks. And developers came and they stepped forward and they said, hey, we are interested in actually making Hyperledger Explorer active again. So Hyperledger Explorer is now an active lab. There are contributors that are participating in that. They're putting a plan together to move Hyperledger Explorer back into incubated projects. And that's the beauty of kind of open source and how open source works and how communities come together. We'll be posting a topic on this subject as well coming soon. So today, I won't show you the timeline again, I think. Maybe it's another one's on there, but today we have 16 different projects. We have the graduated projects, as you see on the top there, as well as the incubating projects on the bottom. And we're very proud of what the community has accomplished. And I'm very proud and honored to work alongside my staff who supports the community day in, day out, whether it's the special interest groups like you guys or the projects themselves, and really making sure that people are working together, they're collaborating on the things that we need to collaborate together on, and really making sure that we can minimize fragmentation across the Hyperledger Foundation and projects. Core to us is also telling our stories, telling our community stories, and obviously telling our Hyperledger member stories. We have now over 30 case studies that we've published on our website. We just published a new case study last week around tax audit use cases. I put the GSBN one, which is obviously a trade finance, and we've done some webinars on it. But it's really important for us to be able to tell these stories of how the technology is being used, because many people still doubt, is blockchain a thing? Can enterprises use blockchain? So we spent a lot of time with our members and our community understanding the use cases. At the end of this deck, I have many use cases that you can use, you can review, you can learn more about, and more importantly, you can use when you're talking to others about enterprise blockchain in different industries, including supply chain and trade finance. We spend a lot of time speaking, not just things like this, but going to events. I'll be at Mobile Web Congress where I'll have 2 talks talks about Hyperledger Foundation and the work that we're doing. And Davos had 7 different presentations really across supply chain, digital identity, and climate action, important things in understanding and educating the market around how Hyperledger technologies and open source is really critical to a lot of these projects. We've been doing research reports. Last year, we published the carbon footprints of NFTs and events. We're back at events. We're going to be, I'll be at Mobile Web Congress, like I said. We'll be at Consensus in April, which is the CoinDesk conference in Austin, and I hope to see, hopefully many of you will have a booth there. Our members will be presenting the work that they've done in the community booth, and we'd welcome anybody to join us there as well. For those of you who missed Global Forum, I'm not going to take a lot of time, but we have hundreds of talks and demos that we have recorded. And I do encourage you to watch some of those because I think there's a lot of great content, lots of great use cases, and lots of opportunities to learn about what the community is working on. Our YouTube library, and right now we're live on YouTube, has over 1.6 million, I'm sure the number is much higher already, views. And it's really a great place for our content to be distributed, for people to be able to watch these videos on their own time. I try to watch 2 to 3 of our YouTube community videos on a weekly basis. I go for a very long walk. I live here in California. I go for a walk down the coast and typically listen to I listen to the special interest groups, including the supply chain trade finance special interest group. So I'm going to pause there. I have a lot of slides. I know I talked a lot, but I want to know how I and the rest of our staff and our members, our Hyperledger members, can be helpful to the supply chain and trade finance group. And I know that you wanted to discuss kind of your goals for 2023 and some of the things. So I'm going to pause there. I'm here for questions. I'll put the link again in the chat, and we can go from there.
Well, that's got to be a new world record for the history of Hyperledger. Thank you very much, Daniela. Any questions from Johnny, Sophia, Ayan? I know I have a couple, but
don't be shy. This is a unique occasion for asking directly to the source.
Well, you haven't heard my question yet. So my question is, Daniela, who comes up with all these project names like Firefly and Cacti and Besu and all that stuff, right?
It's an easy one. And Solang, which is the, and it's not just the names, it's also the project logos, right? So Solang was the most recent one that had a little animal. I like the ones that have little animals like Ursa and stuff, but I like them all. The process is the maintainers work with our staff. They come up with names, and very often the maintainers, right? These are developers that have been working in that code base for a while, right? So they understand what the code base is. They have an idea, or sometimes they already have a name, like Firefly already had a name, the code base already had one. They come to us and they say, here's some options for us to name this project. If they don't, then we come up with options. We work with our marketing committee to come up with options for names of these projects. And then we have a full process around, we do surveys to the maintainers. And we say, of these 5 names, which one do you like? We do IP checks from a trademark perspective, right? You need to make sure that it's trademark and markable. And then the maintainers choose it. Our graphic designers then come up with the actual logo, and the maintainers choose which logo is more representative and which colors are more representative of what they want to build in the community. And that's how logos are built and project names are named.
Very cool. So each code has its own personality. It kind of starts there, right?
Exactly. And there's actually, a sheet that we give to the designers around that. Like, what is the image supposed to reflect? What is is it a fun thing? Is it, we have a whole spec. And I will I'll put a link here into the chat for y'all to see how that goes about.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? So Daniela, then you mentioned timelines for a specific project. So, just going back to the grid, which is the supply chain specific one, what would be the overall very generic timeline for a project like that? And yes, I'm guessing it depends on the maintainers and their interests, but what's the timeline?
What do you mean by timeline? Like when?
So when somebody comes to the Hyperledger Foundation and says, I have this project, for example, I think Cargill is one of the parties behind Grid, right? So they come to you and they say, I have this code, we want to put it into a lab. How long does it take to graduate into a bigger project? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think it is really based on the maintainers and where they want to take that project, right? So we do, as staff, check in with all the projects and the maintainers. Our community architects attend maintainer meetings to be available for them to, to ask questions, to participate. We do health checks on projects as well. And if we see things that maybe are not as healthy as we think it is based on the technical oversight committee project health initiatives, then we try to help them, right? And we try to move them along. But it really is up to the maintainers. The maintainers are kings and queens of their projects, and the project charters are basically for that, right? So a project doesn't have to be exactly the same as someone else. They have to maintain, core governance requirements at the Hyperledger Foundation level. One of the things that we do is we make sure, and the talk each individual project needs to do quarterly updates. So I'm going to put up, and I can add it to the slide deck as well. So you are welcome to take a look at the quarterly updates for all projects. You'll see here, specific to your question for Grid, their last update, and they have to, present it, was in Q4. Right. So they're probably, and it's published when you can see when their next reports are due. And this is an opportunity for them to also tell the community and tell the TOC, which is the Technical Oversight Committee, as well as staff, if they need help, right? If they have plans to do something, if they have plans to graduate, right? If they have V1s or V2s that they're putting out into the market, right? And they want to make sure that we support that. So the project updates are a great place to do that. And, I would recommend for those of you who are interested to check out, the Grid project update specific for Grid, and attend one of the maintainers or the contributor meetings there as well.
Thank you.
There's a question, by the way, which is quite a technical one, Daniela. It talks about farmers, you see, on the supply chain side. And Johnny asks, how can we best integrate farmers into traceability of the stock and commodities using these Hyperledger projects? I guess it's referring to some ongoing projects.
Yeah, there's a few projects. There are a few projects that are very specific to farming, there's one called, and actually, let me see, I think I have them in, I think I might have put them into give me 1 second, Johnny. Let me see if I can pull it up. There's one, I'll make sure I put it back in there, which is called Farm to Plate. That is Hyperledger Fabric implementation to do that. Obviously there's Food Trust. Everyone I think is familiar with Food Trust from Walmart. I just met a company that is doing some very interesting work for the fashion industry. Specifically, they're trying to solve the problem of how do you do verification and tracking of specifically organic cotton, right? And other types of agriculture. And they're actually partnering with, I think it's Boeing or Airbus, one of those big companies that does satellite imaging of fields. And that satellite imaging is then being able to do the attestation, or basically like this cotton came from this field that is certified organic. So there's many use cases around farming use cases. Obviously, there's been the coffee ones that for many years we've been talking about, and those are in production. There's one that's called chocolate cocoa. So yeah, we can send you some more of those, Johnny.
Daniela, this is Alicia. When you were just mentioning for apparel for organic cotton certification, was that provenance out of London?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a different one.
Because I've done some work in that area before.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear about that, Alicia, because I love seeing the updates of what provenance are doing, but I've not been very close with it lately, so I'd love to hear more on that.
I've tried to reach out to her in the past. It's hard to get any response from them, but they do periodically post case studies, which always make for fascinating reading.
Yeah, for sure. Very similar topics. Yeah, Daniela, I was wondering who sponsors the initiatives, or how is this all funded as well with the foundation?
It's a great story. It's a great question. So a couple of things. One, and I mentioned a couple of times, are Hyperledger members. So the Hyperledger members are companies as well as government. We have governments like, the Banque de France just joined, for example, and, different associations in the ecosystem. But our Hyperledger members, there's two categories of members. One is our premier members, and they sit on our governing board, and they are responsible essentially for the project governance and the marketing and, the operations of it. They're my boss. And then there is the technical oversight committee, which is community driven. The governing board does select some of the members of the TOC, but everybody else is voted in by the community. That's the TOC. But how this is funded is our members fund the Hyperledger Foundation. The Hyperledger Foundation, we do yearly budgets, and that budget is allocated to things like project services and in service of the developer community, doing developer events, managing the meetup communities, helping support the special interest groups. All that is funded through membership fees. Their annual membership fees that we're very grateful for our member companies to support. And I'll put a link to our member information, and we love to talk to anyone who is interested in helping support this work, staff, as well as all the programs that we do. And let me put it there. And you can just check out that, and obviously just reach out to me if you have any questions as well. For those of you who are on the live stream, you should just go to hyperledger.org and then you click join. And that button will take you through the overview of what it means to join the foundation and to support and be a leader in the enterprise blockchain space. But thank you for that question.
Thank you.
So
just one other question. Hi. I'm sorry. This is Ayhan from Istanbul, Turkey. I have just one little question. How would it be possible to get a list of all the projects, not the Hyperledger projects, but all the applied use cases already up and running, global basis?
Yeah.
Would it be possible to get such a list from the foundation and to understand what all use cases are running on Hyperledger fabrics or Firefly, whatever it is?
Great. And I'm going to show you. But before I do that, I want to first thank you for joining us today and acknowledge that Turkey, obviously just went through a very devastating earthquake. So our thoughts and our prayers are with the people of Turkey. So thank you. I'm overwhelmed that you actually showed up to talk to us about Hyperledger because of that. So thank you so much. Let me show you a couple of things. And I swear I didn't ask him to come and talk to us about this. So it's a couple of things. All right, let's see here.
And always has good questions.
First, first, and hopefully you see my screen. All right.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go to
Chris. That's all.
Great. I'm going to go to the website to just show you the things that we have on the website, the deck. And so we'll start there. So Hyperledger Foundation, if you go under Learn Case Studies, these are the case studies that we have published with our Hyperledger members. And you can see, and you can, read the case studies. And some of these are translated when we have multiple languages on there. So these are case studies that you have access to. You can also go into the webinars. And the webinars we try to do two webinars a month that are really focused on implementations that our member companies are doing in the market. So you can see here's all the recorded videos and the case the case studies that they're building out as well.
That's great. Thank you.
Next, there's 3 more places, right? Next on the website is our blockchain showcase. These are submitted projects that are submitted by people. So for example, I can sit and say, what has been submitted by supply chain? And you can see the projects that have been submitted for blockchain. So here's Trust Your Supplier, going to give you a little overview, who's using it, and then you can learn more information around the project itself. Okay, and there's a couple hundred of them in there.
That is great. That is the point which I have been looking for.
Great.
Thank you.
And then one more, because this is not public. I am displaying. I am showing this to you for the first time. And Tomasz is going to be like, it's not ready. We are also working on putting an Airtable. We're using the backend as Airtable to have the same thing as that showcase, but these have been looked at. We know exactly what the description is. We are pointing to news articles and the website and the videos. And this is going to be published on our website shortly. But it's a great way, and you can filter. Right, you can filter by the type of use case, once again, that you're looking at. So this will be published very shortly as well, because we understand that people need to understand how do they go about doing it as well. And then last but not least, as I said, in the deck itself, I have pulled, and I'll add the food, farm to food one in here as well, the sample use cases by project, and you can read through those. Hopefully that answers your question and gives you enough to take a look at to start.
Yes. I will. Thank you so much, Daniela.
Great.
There's one more question, Daniela, from Johnny, and he asks, how can we best integrate farmers? Oh, no, hang on a second. What is that? I lost that. There was another one.
I think it's the same one.
It's the same one.
There was a second. Anyway, I lost it.
Well, thank you for sharing that last page with us, Daniela, because that's actually something that we were toying with, is to try to build a repository of supply chain related, or supply chain and trade finance related use cases, right? Because a lot of people need that inspiration, right? Or great use cases. Again, this morning, Bloomberg published a video on YouTube. I did share something on LinkedIn.
I saw it, yeah.
It's always about the darn crypto and the darn Bitcoins, right? And we still have a lot of educating to do.
He got all the right talking points until at the end when he's like, then the crypto people.
And the crypto bros.
Yeah. But it's important, and thank you for leaving, a comment there. It'd be great to also make sure that when we talk about Hyperledger, that we don't see it talked about it as the singular, right? The Hyperledger Foundation is Hyperledger, one thing, but there's so many different projects because we do have public blockchain projects, right? In the Hyperledger Foundation, and then we have, very, enterprise grade, most adopted DLTs like Fabric. So, but thank you for pointing. I saw it on LinkedIn, and then I saw your comments as well, but thank you. And you'll see, I've done some talks. I got interviewed for CNBC on the topic. I got interviewed for TechCrunch, right? The media wants to understand the differences and the opportunities, because there's been blockchain is not just crypto, right? It's great to actually have conversations with reporters, because they're like, oh, we didn't know that, and our job is to make sure they do. So thank you for sharing that video. So I know we have 5 minutes, but I'm very eager to know and about what one of the things, I'm very interested, and I can come back for your next meeting, is to understand what, this special interest group is looking to do and how we can be helpful in 2023 specifically for you all.
I've talked a whole lot. So Alicia, do you wanna talk about our use case poll and?
Sure. Well, for the last couple of meetings, the group has been talking about different things that we could do. And right now we're looking at writing up a use case. Right now, the people who we have involved, we don't have a lot of developers on this team. So what is it that we can do that would add value? So one of the things we were originally thinking to discuss today, but that I think we'll be discussing in the next meeting, is really narrowing down what type of use case we want to do. One thing that came up during our last meeting is whether or not there are any existing initiatives that are leveraging blockchain and probably IoT in the rail freight industry. Because there's a lot of need to improve not just traceability, but allow companies to know where their goods are, to improve estimates on when things will be delivered.
Mm-hmm.
I posted something to LinkedIn a couple weeks ago. It got reshared a few times, but I haven't had any real responses. I reached out to Bidit as well. They suggested.
I have asked your question at least to 5 of my colleagues.
Yeah.
Indeed, they are not the technical guys, but they did not tell me any kind of the clue tips regarding the rail freight and plus the blockchain, and that's the big issue, and would be a good use case.
Yeah, I reached out to somebody at GS1 and they gave me links on stories from 2018. This morning I reached out to a colleague at Walmart, haven't heard back from her yet. I had sent a note directly to a couple of the beta guys as well. And
you might want to reach out to DLT Labs. I mean, they're the ones that worked on that freight management use case. I'll put it in here with Walmart.
Okay.
And Alicia, if you send me a note, I'll introduce you to them for sure.
Great, thank you. I'll do that.
I can do that too, Alicia, because I know them very well.
And I know there's some European projects that are very specifically dealing with from a digital identity perspective around shipments that are chemicals and things that need to have verification, like only certain people can touch those shipments, right? And then doing the verification of, this shipment, and this person can drive it around, kind of thing. There's a couple of those projects, which I think are pretty interesting. And I'll try to get you some of those links.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'd heard about something in the EU from when I posted it to D-Lab, I posted the query, and they sent me something on some projects in Europe, but it was more about transportation, rail transport, as opposed to weight, as opposed to freight.
Yep, I'll look around, but I'll introduce you to DLT Labs. I think that might be a good one.
Yeah, from our meeting before, sorry to interrupt me. I actually had brought that up as a possible use case. I haven't done a ton of it. Just started researching, and it was from the perspective not of a customer. It was a perspective of the actual rail car company itself. So I just playing around with that a little bit. And you were talking about farming. You just want to throw something out there. There was a pretty big initiative a couple of years ago, and it's still being improved. If you want to go out and look at grainchain.io, they're using Fabric to help small farmers from seed all the way to crops, and they put in some moisturizers, IoT to measure moisture in silos, things like that, and helps farmers get paid in a few days rather than months. So if you want to go on the grainchain.io, you'll see use of Fabric and some other. The architecture is based on Fabric, but they have some other components that they use there because they're using best class components for identity management, things like that. So in their view, but in any case, if you're looking for something that has to do with farming and Hyperledger, just go to their website and you'll see how small farmers, mid-sized farmers can use blockchain from the time they buy seeds to the paycheck they get.
Okay. Thank you.
There's one last question.
I'll put it in the chat here.
Sorry, Daniela. This time there is one last question, always
go
from
ahead.
Johnny. How can we best first educate and qualified developers? We're on hackathons and would like to find a way to transition talent into Hyperledger Foundation technology. Is there a roadmap for developers to start?
There is actually, Johnny, there is an initiative going on right now. We have a working group. Let me pull this up for you. That is working on onboarding. So I think it would be a great place for you to go and see the work that they're doing. The goal is, how do people, when they land in the Hyperledger project, it's very noisy. There's lots of things going on. How do they go about finding the right onboarding right into the projects? It's part of the learning materials development working group. And what I'll do is I'll post, because I know we're at time, I'll post some resources in the supply chain trade finance mailing list. And you can follow it there. But yes, we would love to talk to you about how do we get developers. We have the Discord. There's channels for people looking for education and jobs and stuff. So we'll get you set up there. I'll send it. Johnny, are you on the mailing list, I suspect? I think so. Okay, I'll put it on the mailing list. Great.
We can post it in our minutes as well.
Mm-hmm. And there's the farm to plate for the other use case I mentioned. But we would love to come back and work with you on that Airtable and maybe, create a view that's just for supply chain, right? Use cases. And then you can put that on the wiki, for example. You can embed it into the wiki. You can embed it into the supply chain page. So there's things that we can do. The other thing is I'd love to work on an ebook. Last year, we published an ebook on central bank digital currencies. We also published one very specifically about the India regional chapter. We would love to do in the same format, a Hyperledger in action for supply chain and one for trade finance, or maybe combined, we'll see. And then we can translate it, have our community translate it. The CBDC one we did in Chinese and Japanese as well. Both of those regions, I'm sure, would be interested in that ebook. So I'll work with Tomas to maybe, if there's some volunteers that want to work on that ebook with us, we'd love to get that done.
Right.
Okay.
Well,
All
thank
right.
you, Daniela.
I gave you lots of stuff. I hope you found it useful. I just
Very
have to
much.
say, I want to thank everybody, who stayed for the hour, but more importantly, for the things you do, week after week, day after week, day after day for the Hyperledger Foundation. Without you, we're nothing. So we're very grateful. And myself and the rest of the staff is always available to help make sure that your time spent here is, time that helps you as well in your goals. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you,
So,
Daniela. That was
folks,
precious one.
All right.
I think we'll close
All right.
it off, Andrea.
Can I go ahead?
Yeah, let's close this off and see you in 2 weeks' time, same Zoom link. Just 15 days, 14 days actually, and we will restart.
Awesome. All right. I'll publish all this on the